Good morning here with For His Kingdom. I am Nadia Podcast.
And I'm DJ Fear.
And it's good to be here this morning. And we've got a very special guest with us, Garrow Coetzee, who is currently in Cape Town, somewhere near the coast somewhere. He'll tell us more about where he is and what's his story. But I found Garrow on Lig Tydskrif. One of the articles was written about him. And his story is so enormous, so impactful that you can't just scroll by and think, oh, what a good story, and leave it there. I had to go find him and say, hey, I need you to come and speak to us and tell your story. And so without further ado, Garrow, welcome on our podcast. Please introduce us to you. What is your backstory? Who are you? Where are you from? Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Nadia and DJ, for having me. So like Nadia said, I'm Garrow. I come from Parow in Cape Town. Basically, I've born and bred in Cape Town, grew up in a good Christian home. Parents are still married today. But just the way my life turned out, I sort of left the tracks that the normal people ran on very early in life. So, and I'm one of those people that if I do something, I give it everything or nothing at all. So when I went off the tracks, I made sure that I went off properly, fortunately, unfortunately. And then what that led to was basically by standard 5, which is 12 years old, grade 7, was the first time where I had done things where police got involved and I faced suspension from school and had to do some community service to sort it out. By standard 6, I was an alcoholic. By standard 7, I was a drug addict. By standard 7, I was not so much a drug addict, but I was an alcoholic to the extent where in standard 7, I would go every day of the week after school and go to the 7-Eleven and buy. You used to get this wine called Crackling. And I'd tell them it was for my dad, and I'd be drinking at 13 years old every day after school just to get through the afternoons. And then things just got very much worse from there. I had my first court case that actually went to court when I was in standard 9, and I got to plead it out and just pay a fine, which was very nice. I was a drug addict, full-on drug addict by standard 9 across multiple platforms. And we actually used to have dealers that were almost like Mr. Delivery because we couldn't get through. We were addicted, so heroin was our drug of choice. And myself and a group of my friends were already addicted to the point of where if we didn't use by first break at school, we'd start having withdrawal symptoms at school. So we used to have like a drug dealer, Mr. Delivery, that we used to phone, that used to come out to our school and meet us at the gates at break time, and that's how we'd sort of get through our day. Obviously, being in school, not working, you start finding other ways to, I can't call it supplement your income, to generate an income.
Finance it, yeah.
Yeah, because drugs are expensive. We did at one of the rehabs where we had to do a stock take of, your life and what you've done. We worked out that my friends and I, for our group of 6 or 7, we were each spending on average between 1,000 and 2,000 rand a day when we were in standard 9, which, to get that kind of money, the nice thing is when you're in school, you get away with a lot more because people look at you a lot less, if I can put it like that. If a person gets robbed, I mean, when I was in my case from standard 5, where the first time police were involved is where that's where I learned the fancy word for accosting someone or for robbing someone is accosting someone. Like in standard 5, I'd already robbed my first person, and obviously things just get, because your need for money gets more, so the things you're willing to do gets bigger and greater from there.
Before you continue on with this, I want to, if I can, just ask you. So you go through school, by I mean elementary school you already an alcoholic. By ninth grade, I think you said, now you already a drug addict. Where
Yes.
where is your family? How do they know at this point? This is what's like. What's your situation?
So my family knew, and like I said, I was really raised in a good home. Like there was food in the fridge, and clothes to wear and beds to sleep in, and everything else. Like I was in a good middle class family, middle class area, everything else. But most drug addicts and alcoholics are very good at hiding things. So, I'll never forget my dad one day. So what we used to do is myself and my best friend who used to use together, he would come to my house and we'd say that we're, like what kids are today, sitting on Nintendos or whatever. We'd say, we're going to sit playing games in the room, and we'd go into my room and close my door. And we'd actually be dragging for 5 hours, but they'd be thinking we're sitting playing a game or whatever, and obviously not seeing us. And if they come in, the lights are off, and and it was so bad that I remember the one day my dad called me outside, and he's like, he wants to have a chat to me. And he says to me, I'll love you no matter what. And I look at him and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, so if you want to tell me something. And then I picked up, like, he actually thought that I was a bit gay. And that's why we were spending this time together in the room. And at that stage, the only thing I could say to him, obviously, was don't worry about it. But it's like sort of you learn to separate yourself. And most families, I think, are used to this thing in society where, like, kids become teenagers and they start doing their own thing. So when that's like sort of when you've slowly started drifting off, and your parents are trying to not be too hard because they don't want to break everything, so they try and give you a bit of leeway, but at the end of the day you end up operating so much in the dark and finding ways to just get around things so that people don't see them, or they go to bed at 10. So you'll say, oh, my friend's mom is dropping me off at 11, but actually it's the drug dealer from Elsie's River that's quickly dropping you while he's on a run or something like that. So I think I was just very good at hiding it. And then I also think, so if you see someone that never drinks and they're drunk, you notice it immediately because you're like, flip, this isn't normal. But if you used to seeing someone that from the morning to the night has a drink in them or is high, you're like, that person always just looks a bit sleepy. That person's always a bit, making silly jokes. It's just like you actually start thinking that that's what the person is because you never see them as anything else.
And then tell me, how was your marks at school? Did your teachers not start realizing, that you're falling behind? You said now in grade 7, standard 5, you had an incident with the cops. What did your teachers, what did your parents do about it? Were they involved? Did they know about it?
Yeah, so because I was still so young, the school ended up handling it. But people went to the police because basically, to make a long story short, but not to make light of it, in one afternoon, myself and a group of other guys, we'd in the afternoon gone out, we'd vandalized a school, we'd vandalized 2 public play areas, we'd mugged the guy in front of his father, we'd stolen some stuff, caused some damage to another place. So it was quite widespread through an area. If I say widespread, I mean it was within like a 2-kilometer radius, and people never knew it was children. So they got the police involved, and then when the police realized from shop footage and stuff, and they were like, hey, these are actually kids, they went and spoke to to our school, and thankfully, maybe not thankfully, our school ended up that they said, okay, well, these kids are like, they're not even out of primary school, like, we'll take care of it. So it never at that stage went further, and it was just sort of written off to, these are very naughty kids, but we'll get it under control.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So let's fast forward. You by ninth grade, I think you said you're full on addicted. Did you finish high school?
I did not. So I got suspended my first time when I was in grade 11. I got suspended my first time for fighting at school, and then I did grade 11 over again, and then just before the end of grade 11, the police came and did a raid on our school, and I got caught with heroin at school, and I ended up going to court over that. And then because of that, the school said basically I can finish out the year and write my exams, but I obviously wasn't welcome back for matric. So I got grade 11 and then sort of went on and started living life, because also then an education at that stage wasn't a priority to me as much as it might have been to my family, because if you tell a kid that's finding his own ways of making 1,000, 2,000 rand a day, and that's living his, best life, that you've got to go study now. It's just like, there's not much drive for it, because you're so inundated with the wrong things and enjoying that side of life too much, and you're the life of every party, and everyone wants to be your friend, and, you walking around with more money than your parents have. It's just like, so you get that arrogant thing of like, why should I be listening to you if I'm already living freer than you are? Not realizing that freedom is actually taking you into bondage.
Yeah.
So how did you generate money at that stage if you're saying you was making 1,000 to 2,000 rand a day?
There was so many ways, like I could, but basically we were stealing, and we were finding ways to, get people. So we would steal things, we would steal money, we would rob dealers, we would get like a DJ that comes to us and he's like, hey, bro, I want the latest pair of Under Armour this, but they're $3,000. I'll give you $1,000 if you get them for me. And then you go into a shoe shop, you're a child in your school uniform, no one looks at you. So you literally walk into the shop in like pluckies, in the shop, put on that new pair of Under Armours that's the size the guy wants, put your pluckies in your jacket pocket, and you walk out, meet the guy in the parking lot, and you give it to him, you've got 1,000 rand, So there's like lots of things like that. There was some small, if I can call it that, like burglaries and stuff at that stage. But because we didn't have IDs, we weren't 18, we couldn't go sell it at cash converters or anywhere. It was like, we literally had one friend whose dad caught him because his whole double clothing cupboard was just full of stuff that we'd stolen that we didn't know how to get rid of. So we were like, well, that's not the way to go at this stage,
Okay, so what happened then? You in the article with Lig Tydskrif, the article sort of starts off with you are homeless and you enter an old lady's house. So let's pick the story up there. How do you end up homeless, and what happens then?
Yeah, so because obviously I'd gone off the track so much, my parents went through a lot. Eventually it gets to a point where like everyone just writes you off, and they're like, we just can't anymore because of what you're doing to everyone else around you, and how much like I've cost family, friends, everything, lots and lots of money and time. And, I've been to jail lots where my dad was like every week visiting me in jail and this and that. And it just gets to a point where they're like, well, if this is what you're choosing to do with your life, then that's on you. You're a grown up now. We can't like be part of it, and we can't enable it anymore. So eventually you become unemployable because you end up stealing at all your employers and whatever. You don't have family or friends to turn to because you've burnt all of those bridges. So you end up sleeping outside. And drugs don't, especially like heroin, it doesn't, people always say it lets you escape from reality. It's not that it lets you escape from reality, but it numbs reality beautifully. So if you've had a shot, you can literally be sitting in a short pants outside in the rain and you're content because you're not feeling any of the pain of your life, if I can put it that way. So yeah, ended up on the street. Obviously, then there is only criminal ways to make a living in and out of jail. Eventually met a woman that was also a drug addict, and we ended up getting married. And at a stage we decided that we wanted to get off the street, sort our lives out. And we knew this couple that the guy was already confined to bed, the lady was quite old, and we were like, right, well, we'll just go help them along because they're on their way to the next life in any case. It's not like we're killing 15-year-olds. These are people that have lived a good life and are on their way out. And then we'll take their car. We've got IDs, we'll sell everything in their house that we can at Cash Crusaders because your plans are brilliant, and because they're dead, no one will be there to report the stuff stolen. It's a foolproof plan. And then we'll take all the money and we'll get in their car and we'll drive to like a small town, get meds, get clean, and then, we've got cash to start a new life. It's like, how could that not work? It's amazing the things the things your normal is a very, very twisted. Like I always tell people, my frame of reference is very different from normal people's because of the life I've lived and the side of life I've lived and the things that I've seen people do, even some people that you'll never, like you'll walk past them in the shop and never think that like people are capable of this kind of thing, So we ended up gaining entry there. And I used to walk around with a panga at that stage because streets are dangerous and all the 28s are in Belleville, and I've been stabbed a few times. So it's like you need to, protect yourself somehow. And pangas, people tend to get frights just because it's big, even though it's ineffective, really. And I was standing down this lady's passage, and we were she knew that we were in the house at this stage because we were like, and I thought, okay, when she comes down the passage now, I'm just going to knock her and then we'll go to the bedroom and we'll finish that. And then people had seen us going into the house and they'd phoned the police. So there was a knock on the door and it was the police. And then they obviously said, but they want to come in and have a look around. I hid the panga. They found us in the house. They were like, right, these people also have... They obviously then identified us and they're like, right, these people also have outstanding housebreaking cases against both of them. So we're sort of arresting them and taking them out here. You've dodged the bullet. And no one had an idea how big a bullet, not just she had dodged, but we had dodged. Because, I mean, if the police had knocked there after she'd walked down the passage, we would have been picked up for single or double murder, not for... not being where we're not supposed to and having housebreaking cases. And then the woman actually turned around and she looked at the cops and she said to them, shame, look how these kids look. Can they at least eat before they go? And somehow the police said yes. And it was such a surreal thing because then we sat at this lady's breakfast table. Police took the handcuffs off because like drug addicts aren't very strong. They knew we weren't going anywhere. But us and this lady and the two cops sat and all had breakfast together. And then when that was done, we got up. I'd love to say that like she prayed for us and everything, but like we got up and she just came to us and she was like, she hopes that at some stage, like we find God and we manage to change our lives. And then we went off to jail. So at this stage as well, my then wife was pregnant, which was the reason we wanted to do this, because we were like, we need to look after the child that's coming, and this child can't come into the world a drug addict. Then that was that, and then I went to jail for what would be my last time.
Beautiful. Now, how did you meet God? Because after this, things start to change for you. How did God intervene in your life?
Yeah, so there, when I was in jail that time, I sort of made a deal with God, and I was like, right, my life is still my life, but I want to get it right. And obviously being raised in a Christian home, I knew that God existed, I've got a praying family and whatever. So I made God this deal, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll stop. I'm still a drug addict, I'm still, homeless, I'm still all these things, but I'll stop doing as much of the wrong things as I can, as far as I won't break into houses, I won't rob people, I'm not going to walk around with it. Like I'll and I'll do that, and then I'm trusting that if I'm doing what I can, that you'll do something from your side. So I left jail. Instead of going and breaking into houses or doing anything like that, I became one of those oaks that like stands at the robot with a board, or when you're stopping at a shopping center that's coming up to you telling you a story about cars run out of petrol or and that lasted for 2 years. And eventually, after like 2 years, I was like, "Hey God, like I'm trying. Is this is this happening?" And then after 2 years, I was hiking to one of my normal spots where I'd stand at the robots, because I tried standing at robots away from where my dealers were, in like an area or two over. Because if people give you money now at a robot and then see you passed out on the pavement, it's a bit like, well, we're not giving you money again. Where if you're in a total different area, it's sort of fine. And then this guy drove past me and picked me up, and he still told me like he never picks up hitchhikers. And he's like, but last time he drove past me, like God told him to pick me up, and he didn't listen. And now he's driven past me again, and God's told him again, and he's already learned in his life he needs to listen when God speaks. Got a lift with this guy, dropped me off. He gave me his card. He said, like, hey, give me a call. Let's, have a chat and see, what we can do. And I didn't phone him. And then 2 days later, I was being one of those guys in a parking lot, and I was walking in the parking lot begging. And then I heard this person call me like, hey, Garrow, what are you doing? Yeah. And I turned, and it was this guy again. And then I was like, right, so now obviously this is a bit in my face, like I'm asking God for help, and he sends someone that's like, here's help, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then I don't ask, like grab it with both hands, and he sends the person again to meet me in another random place like 2 days later. So yeah, we ended up having a meal in a restaurant, which the people there must have thought, I don't know what, because it's like this, businessman walking in with a homeless guy in torn clothes, and that smells beautiful. And yeah, he basically said to me, what do I want? Like, do I want help? Do I want money? And I said to him, like, I want money, dude. Like, I'm not interested. I mean, I want help. Like, I'm not interested in the money, because like, even if you offer me the money now and tell me you're going to help me tomorrow, like that money could be my OD tonight, and I won't live it to see tomorrow. And yeah, this guy then fundraised for me. He got me into a restoration center. I still had court cases running, and he still had to come pick me up at the restoration center to finish my last court case on my 32nd birthday, like on the day of my birthday. And then, yeah, I spent 8 months at the restoration center, just like so that they're not a rehab, they're at Hope Farm out in Hopefield. And their whole thing is like, let go and let God, like seek first the kingdom, and then the other things are added unto you. And they understand that the battle is spiritual, and the physical symptom is just addiction or alcohol or so on. Yeah, and then that's where I spent the next 9 months of my life.
Garrow, tell me, you told me when you got locked up, your girlfriend or your wife at that stage was pregnant. So where is she in this picture now? And did she give birth?
So she did. We both got released. We went to separate jails. We both got released the same day, but obviously from separate courts. And before she actually gave birth, but we went back to the streets. The baby was born. For the purposes of protecting her, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but she was born. We weren't in a position to look after her. We basically got given the option of either we give her up for adoption or we give her up to the state, but us keeping her wasn't an option.
Okay.
So thankfully for God, once again, there was this couple that couldn't have kids of their own, and they were both like good Christian people that wanted a child, and it just happened to work out that they ended up adopting her. She's still with them today. I haven't seen her in the last 13 years. I'm hoping that one day I will. She knows that I exist, but I think it would be selfish of me to try and be part of her life now, because it would only make me feel better. For a teenage child, it's not going to be any improvement at all. So yeah, I'm just so that's almost as much detail as I can go in on that.
That's good.
And then sorry, the mom, I don't know. We lost contact a few years ago just because her and I were on different life trajectories.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So thank you for sharing. Is it easy for you to speak about these things now?
It's easy in a sense. The thing with my daughter, I don't speak about too much, just because for her protection. Like, I don't want, for her family, like they've not done the things I've done to deserve any of the, like, I almost want to say the stigma that would come with it, or because there's a lot of stories attached to that as well. So, like, for my personal story, I'm happy speaking about it, especially with from the there to the now, all the things that was like, but God, like all the things that I'm living with today that I was convinced I would die without when I was still on the streets, like I never thought.
So God has like really freed you from all the shame and the guilt. I'm picking up that how you are speaking, you seem to be free. You seem to be very at ease, almost like, Paul. I mean, Paul wasn't, did awful things, but then God just restored this man. And is that true for you? Are you completely restored in that sense? That there's no shame from the past?
No, there's not. So, like any normal person, because I'm not a sociopath, if I ran into people that I've done it in the past, I do feel, I feel, I almost want to call it guilt, because like I know that I've done wrong there and I need to make amends and stuff like that. But I think the reason I don't have shame is because I even sometimes sit and look back at things I've done in the life I've lived, and I'm like, flip, it feels like I'm watching a movie. Like, that isn't me or my identity at all anymore. And I'm totally freed from addiction. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. I say that because I'm rooted in Christ way. Like, so sort of like, I'm not ashamed, because my pride of what God's done outshines the shame of how I've lived. If that makes sense.
Beautiful. So tell us, Garrow, that's such an incredible story. Where are you now? What are you busy with currently in your life?
So I just quickly want to share. So I'm married. If I could share that story just really quickly.
Sure, please.
That's another thing of like where, if you just like sort of follow the word and are obedient to the word and actually live for God, just the way he does things, So after I got clean, I was working overseas. There's amazing stories there where like God like cleared my criminal record. If you go look now, even though I had one going back 20 years, if you look now, like I get police clearance certificates. It's just, and the Bible said, God love wipes out your record of wrong. And it's like with me, it's physically happened. But I decided I wanted a wife, and, being very immature still, I hopped on some of these dating apps, and I got a very clear word from God. And he was like, right, when you meet the woman that's going to be your wife, you'll tell her the 3 worst things about you. And she'll say, cool, that's who you were, not who you are. Let's build from there. And I went on 1 or 2 dates, and I would have coffee dates, and I'd sit down with these women and I'd be like, right, so, drug addict, homeless, been to jail, here I am with not much other than myself to offer. And on both dates I went on, the response that I got was, so does that mean no sex before marriage? And I was like, yeah, sort of, that's what I'm a Christian now. And both these women were like, that's not going to work for us. And
Wow.
I was just like, well, then it's not going to work for me either. Thanks for the coffee. But like, if I'm following God, I need to follow him properly. So I was like, right, Lord, women be crazy. I'm not going down this road. And I'll just, I'll live a celibate life and just do ministry full time and just like go after you. And I started working towards the future. And then I was in a kitchen at a place I was working, and the tea lady, like this very, like die ou apostoliese kleerling vrouens wat, Here Jesus, jy weet daai mense. And my now wife walked in, and she looked at me and she looked at my wife, and she said, "No, man, what's wrong with you guys? You're a young single Christian. You must take her out for coffee, and I want to be at the wedding." And I was like, just calm down. Like, I've just told God I'm happy to live celibate and like by myself if that's what must happen. And like, I don't even know her name yet, but you're inviting yourself to the wedding already. But long story short, we had our coffee. I told her my 3 things. She had a very different response to the rest of the women, but a very positive one. And a year later, we ended up getting married, and that tea lady was at our wedding. Today, we've been married 7 years. I've got 3 beautiful children with her, and we're fighting the normal struggles that everybody else does, does and has. But it was just so to me that, like, while I was trying to date in my own power, I was getting like all the women that didn't align with my beliefs. And as soon as I gave that over to God, and I was like, right, if this isn't on the cards, it's fine, because it's you before them. And then God would literally like force someone else to get me into a relationship with someone that then becomes my partner for the rest of my time. Yeah. Which, to me was like, that's how I know that it's the right woman, because I got her sent from God when I wasn't looking for her.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing, eh?
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
Such a testimony. So, okay, that's beautiful. I mean, we could actually stop right there. I mean, it's a highlight. But I know you want to share with us, and I'm going to ask you 2 things as we land this conversation. 2 things. Tell us what you are busy with now. Are you in ministry? What are you doing for the kingdom? And then lastly, if you can share a message to our listeners, maybe, maybe there's a parent listening. They've got a child that's into drugs, or maybe a family member, or maybe someone listening that's finding themselves involved with drugs and the wrong things. What would be your going away message for this podcast? So those 2 things.
Okay.
But first, tell us where you are and what you're doing. Yeah.
Okay, so busy with now. We're wanting to go full-time into ministry. As of halfway through mid-June, we have officially been registered as Light on Ministries. We're an NPC that exists in the world, and the purpose and the passion and the plan is to be that beacon of light to those still lost in the darkness, to sort of like, because that's what sort of speaks to me, and that's what I needed. So yeah, we've recently registered. We're at the fundraising portion at the moment, and then the future looks that we'll be opening a halfway house, which will be the bridge between rehabilitation and the real world. It'll be that place where you live in between, where you get to have given good Christian tools on how to steward relationship, how to steward finance, how to steward time, how to, steward your life in a positive way, and cope in ways different to what you were used to. And to then also have that where we can afford to take people off the streets and take people from jail that had nothing like I did, and actually give them a platform to sort of start from. Because the unfortunate thing is that at the moment, that's sort of the gap where people gets lost, because not everybody has family, and even family gets tired. And, sometimes people just need that one person. I know I said to my mentor one day, and I was like, dude, the one thing I can't understand is why you're helping me, because there's nothing in it for you. And he's like, but there doesn't have to be something in it for me to love you. I'm just called to love you. And like, that's sort of our mandate and what we want to do, because that's what changed me. It wasn't locks, it wasn't streets, it wasn't jail. It was like someone that came, that loved me. Without them, I'll never be able to repay him. You know, a life that should have ended 10 years ago today has a wife and 3 kids because of him, you know, and his obedience to God. So yeah, that's where we at. So fundraising to bring the dream that God laid on us, and I believe like we walk through the fire so that we can bring other people water afterwards. It's like while they're still burning, and like that. That's
You're
what we're
welcome.
working towards.
So if you're listening here, we will be sharing some details that you can reach out to Garrow if you want to support his ministry, or you love the vision. Then we'll give some details how you can reach out to him and get involved with what he's doing, and where he's impacting his community. So, some closing thoughts, Garrow.
My closing thoughts would just be like test God, you know, like the scriptures are, you know, I don't want to sound cliche, but like they're alive and they're written the way they're written for a reason, and like none of the promises in the Bible are false ones, you know, and if you're just obedient to what, like the walk is so simple because obedience doesn't require emotion. It's just like I do what the word says, and like through the guy that picked me up that day at the robot, through his obedience, my life was saved. Through my obedience, I'm today married with children. You know, through my wife's obedience, we've got other things happening in our home again. It's like, but if you never give God that chance, you know, everybody wants these big faith stories, but when they get into the position of like, I need to trust God for something, they try and do everything in their own power. Like actually give God that space to move in your life, if I can put it like that, you know, and like there's power in prayer. And I think one of the most thankless jobs in the kingdom is the intercessory prayer warriors, but the work that they're actually doing for us is just incredible, you know. And it's like, take that step of faith in God. And I'm not a health and wealth guy, I'm a provision guy, but I'm not saying take that step for, you know, like, Lord, I want a car that's 2 years old and I want the new iPhone. I like not for that, but for actual things that matter and that are going to carry into the next life and that are going to improve your character as a person. Like, you know, trust God for the wife and don't go looking for her yourself. You know, trust God for the breakthrough with a loved one that you've lost contact with. You know, trust God for, you know, work, for anything, but actually just like read the word, and then what you read in the word, like put it into practice and try it out, and you'll sort of be amazed at how often, and I think God always comes through at the 99 so that we know, like, we've tried everything, like this definitely wasn't me because I tried this 4 months ago and it's not working, and now all of a sudden, like, boom, you know. So yeah, my encouragement would just be like, have a little faith, man. Like, we're the chosen people, but it's like we need to choose God because he's chosen us long ago, and we need to actually give him the space to move in our lives.
That's beautiful.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to come on our little small podcast in the world and to speak to the people listening to us. And we just praise the Lord for what he's done in your life. And we are thankful. Oh, I've got something in my eye. Goodness. We are thankful that the Lord is just using your, what is it? Daar's 'n gesegde wat sê, jou misery word jou wat is nou there's a saying that says,
your testimony.
yeah, so it's something like that, but it's a different word, but it's basically the same concept. Your test becomes your testimony. And so beautiful that the Lord has used everything that the devil meant for evil in your life, and he's turned it for the good for those who love him. You know, so thank you for going out and actually making using your experiences to make a difference in this world. And I want to finish with this thought because it just ties into everything that you've said about love. When we read the scriptures, it tells us that it's the love of God that draws all men unto repentance. And we will do good to remember those words from scripture. 100%.
Amen.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, we
Thank
look
you.
forward to being with all of you again next week
Yeah.
on our next podcast, and we'll let you know what that will be about. But then we'll speak again then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.